In the competitive Yu-Gi-Oh environment, consistency is everything. That's why all the meta decks are primarily based off of one-card starters or one-card engines. Dogmatica Invoked only needs an Alistair to pop off to at least some extent. Dragon Link just needs a Safer. Prank Kids just needs any Prank Kids monster. But there's a different kind of consistency. There is the consistency that though a deck may take multiple cards to pop off, all of its cards may do the same thing, or similar things. Think of decks like True Draco in the past. NEKROZ is one of those decks as well, with the ability to put out an extra deck skill drain off of just 2 cards, and with almost all of the deck being searchers, bricks are very rare. That's why I think this deck actually has a lot of potential this format. With that in mind, I'd like to present to you guys my post Ghost from the Past, NEKROZ deck profiled. This one is saucy. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is your boy Paye. I'm not feeling great right now. I'm gonna be real, it's that time of the year. Allergies are in full swing, so I'm sorry if I am a little bit sniffly, but that will not be stopping me from getting y'all this spicy deck profile. Today, like I said, we have NEKROZ, and I think this deck actually has some huge potential this format. It only really has 2 weaknesses. One being that the Dragon Link boards are just so powerful right now. Like, that deck is super overtuned. I mean, realistically, every deck is going to be losing to Dragon Link right now. Like, that's not particular to NEKROZ. And the other weakness is that Droll and Lockhart is seeing a little bit of side deck play right now, at least, and that is probably the only hand trap that really hurts this deck. But other than that, I think the deck actually can play through a lot of what the format is putting out. Winda doesn't really hurt because you can usually turn it off with your Unicores. Like, a lot of the boards that aren't named just full Dragon Link board plus hand traps are actually pretty breakable to this deck. So I'm not going to waste any more of your time. Let's get straight into the main deck, starting with the monsters. This is a 43-card main deck because, like I said, everything in the deck kind of functions similarly. There's a ton of searchers. It's just super consistent, so going over 40 really doesn't hurt that much. I'm going to start with the most important NEKROZ monsters. So we have triple copies each of NEKROZ of Brionac, 3 copies of NEKROZ of Unicore, and only 2 copies of NEKROZ of Clouseless. So if you aren't familiar with how the NEKROZ monsters work, they're all based on a synchro monster, at least the ritual monsters are, and they each have 2 effects, one in hand, one on field. The on-field effect for each of these guys is just very similar to their synchro monsters. So Brionac can target 2 face-up monsters, fill their spells from the extra deck, and shuffle in the deck at spell speed 1. So it's not a quick effect, unfortunately. This card would probably be $50 for the Ultra if it was, but whatever. The Unicore on field is an extra deck skill drain, which is just, this is the win condition of the deck for sure. You want to always be dropping this first turn, which you will always be doing that because the deck is just great at doing that. And then Clouseless on field can target a monster to special summon from the extra deck and cut its attack to 0 and negate its effects. However, these aren't the only effects these guys have. Brionac can discard itself to search a NEKROZ monster, Clouseless can discard itself to search a NEKROZ spell, and Unicore can discard itself to target a NEKROZ card engraved and add it back to hand. So not only is Unicore your skill drain, but he's also the recursion, which is just, it's super important for this deck to have, and I think this card coming back to 3 actually didn't get as much attention as it probably should have. I think it was overshadowed by Multi-Faker coming back, but this card at 3 is actually like kind of terrifying. This card just turns off so many decks right now, and honestly, you have to respect it. Of course, these aren't the only NEKROZ monsters you're running, though. We do run the 1 copy of NEKROZ of Trishula. This is situationally the most powerful NEKROZ monster, but obviously you only really need the 1 because opening it really doesn't do a ton. So in hand, it can discard itself to negate the activation of an effect that targets your NEKROZ monster, which is pretty cool. So it turns off like impermanence to stop your Unicore. He's a pretty good card, and then on field, of course, he is basically Trishula from the extra deck, except he has to banish exactly 3. So if your opponent has no cards in grave or no cards in hand, you cannot fire that. So it is important to keep that in mind. We cut him to 1 though because we did get the new NEKROZ of Aradbeer. Now if you aren't sure what this card does, this card is incredible. It is a level 10 Water Warrior, 3200 attack, 32 defense, so he is massive. Most decks will already have trouble punching over this. In hand, it can discard itself for cost to tribute up to 2 NEKROZs from hand or field for effect, and then send that many NEKROZ cards from deck to grave. I didn't think that was very good until I remembered that Shuret is a card, and Shuret searches Brio when it's tributed, so this plus Shuret is a weird way to get in your combo, but it still gets there. And then on field, when your opponent activates a monster effect, you can tribute a monster from hand or field to negate the activation, and if you do, banish it. So this card is a 3300 Makaba for the most part, and it's honestly just incredible. This card actually gives this deck an insane amount of power boost. I really think that this card is super slept on right now. You have to respect this thing in addition to Unicorn, because prior to Aurabir, we didn't really have any disruption that could hit the main deck. Like, these two only hit the extra deck. So the ability that now we can turn off like the Safers, now we can turn off like the Alistair effects, like this is actually monumental for this deck. Now, only one change was made between this list here and the list I was playing last night. I was main decking one copy of Valkyrius. I'm gonna be real, Valkyrius really isn't that great right now, but what I was side decking that I'm actually now main decking is the one copy of NEKROZ of Gungnir. This may look a little strange, but hear me out. Striker isn't the best deck, but it's seeing some play. Eldritch is one of the best decks right now. Dragon Link has Levineer. Levineer destroys stuff, which is one of their big ways to get rid of the Unicorn once you stick it. So the thing with the Valkyrius is he doesn't protect your Unicorn from things that aren't battle. Granted, it ends the battle phase, which is nice, but if your opponent has like the impermanence, you'll have the Trishula, but if they have something like, say, an Afterburners or a Conquistador Pop, the Unicorn's just kind of dead in the water. So I liked the Gungnir because it gives it the protection from effects or battle, because Unicorn's also 23, so yeah, you'll be taking a little bit of damage, but Gungnir can do almost the same thing that Val can, but also give that extra versatility of protecting from card effects. So that's why I'm actually main decking this. Obviously, it is 100% personal preference. If you do want to play the copy of Valkyrius, by all means, you can do that, but personally, I just wasn't a huge fan of it. The only other non-NEKROZ monster that we run as a ritual is the one copy of Cyber Angel Ben 10. You play this because it's very easy to search. You only ever played one, and this deck can still drop Vandy's Ruler even with Ben 10 at one. This change really didn't hurt this deck much. So that is it for the NEKROZ ritual monsters. Ben 10's kind of an honorary NEKROZ at this point. For the implantations, we played 3 copies of Chalice Slime. I was originally running 1, and some of the new builds are running 1. That is wrong. If you have access to the Dogmatica engine, then yeah, you can get away with 1 of this. But this is just basically pure NEKROZ with a bigger incantation engine. So 3 of this because there's a 2-card combo involving this card and another card that I'll get to later. And then 2 each of Talismandra, Candle, and Pensaplume. You hate drawing these, but you have to play them because you want to get all of those searches, and then you kind of hate drawing this, but this is like the next best one to draw because it can summon either of these from deck, because if you aren't familiar, Talismandra searches a ritual monster, Candle searches a ritual spell, and Pensaplume recurs a ritual monster. The rest of the monsters we played double copies of Shuret, because I don't think you really need 3 of this, but I was playing 1, and I will say I like that second one. Going second, I will be honest, I do side out the second one quite often, because if you're going second, you're usually going to be able to break your board pretty well, and the grind game won't be in their favor, so the game will end quick. And a grind game too will come up, but for the most part, if I'm going second, I side out the second one. And then for the Ben 10 search targets, we played double Manju. It is searchable, this way you don't play 3. Also, because you sometimes want to tribute summon your Vanity's Ruler, because Vanity's Ruler, I'm gonna be real, I hate the card. I don't think it's healthy for the game, but as long as it's legal, it wins games a lot. So this card is kind of like a secondary win condition. If you can drop Vanity's Ruler plus Unicorn, you're the best NEKROZ player on the face of the planet. Now the last monster I'm playing is another reason why I'm not playing Valkyris, because you cannot Valkyris under Artifact Lancia. You can search this with Ben 10, and this card is dirty this format. The amount of decks that this card just ends the turn of is ridiculous. This is the only hand trap I'm playing in the main deck, because I think in this deck you don't really want to be able to stop your opponent as much. Obviously, you kind of care what they put up, but the deck has so much gas to kind of just either punch through the board or just break through it and then pick it apart from there with Unicorn, that you just want high impact hand traps to end their turn so it's easier for you to do your turn. Because I'm not trying to discard 3 cards just to only half stop the Dragon Link player's board, if that makes sense. So that is it for the monsters. I don't know the exact number, but it is predominantly a monster-focused deck. But it's not all monsters. Let's get into the spells. Leading off with the spells, triple copies of Pot of Extravagance. This card is completely free inside this deck. The only thing you really need is at least 1 copy of Herald and the Arclight in the extra deck. And, I mean, you're never banishing all 3. I mean, it's only ever happened once that I banished all 3, but I didn't banish any of my Entices. So, like, it's still fine. And just that draw 2 is incredible in this deck. You gotta play it, I think. Triple copies of Preparation of Rites. It's at 3, so we're gonna play 3. This is just, I don't need to explain this. I'm pretty sure this is the standard NEKROZ ritual lineup. Double Kaleidoscope, double Cycle, and 1 Mirror. Kaleidoscope with triple Unicorn is just super powerful at this point, because it basically says Nadir Servant plus drop a skill drain. Cycle is kind of like a Monster Reborn, and that's usually how you're able to cycle off with your Benten effect by attributing the Benten from hand to summon a Brio from grave. And then Mirror is only really there when it's not good in the early game, but in sort of like the mid game when you want to banish some Nekrozes from your grave to summon like your bigger dudes, usually like your Trishula or your Aradbir. That's what Mirror is for. I'm gonna be honest, I think Mirror kind of sucks, but you do have to play it because it comes up enough where it is useful. So I wouldn't cut it, but sometimes you draw it and it feels bad, I will say that. The other ritual spell we're playing is the 1 Incantation Inception. This is the other card in the 2-card combo with Chalice Slime that I will talk about when we get to the combo tutorials and test hands. But this card is actually just insane. The ability that you can ritual summon not once per turn, by the way, by attributing incantations, and then send an incantation from hand or grave, add this back, and then summon another incantation from deck. I think this is possibly one of the greatest ritual spells of all time. Do not sleep on this card. This thing is ridiculous. Konami, where's our foil reprint of this? This card is busted. But the only other spells we play in the main deck, 1 copy of Rhoda. It searches Clouseless and Assured, so it can get you usually what you want, and then the 1 copy of Call by the Grave. I mean, you gotta play it because sometimes it just comes up. And this card, I'm gonna be real. I'm not sure how many other people can agree with me on this. This card puts in more work at 1 than it did at 3. I don't know why, but it's just entertaining to me. That is it for the main deck. Let me get into the extra deck. Like I said, the main deck is 43 cards, which I'm fine playing over 40 in this deck, like I said, because you can see there's just a ton of searchers, so it really doesn't hurt the consistency. The extra deck, most of it doesn't actually matter. The only thing we really care about is just 3 copies of Herald the Arclight. And then I only play 2 copies of Entis. I should probably play a 3rd one. I just haven't been able to get my hands on one. But Herald is standard because if it's sent to the graveyard, so you're sending off Kaleidoscope, and then when it's sent, it searches a ritual spell or ritual monster, so it's just another search for the deck. And then Entis, you already know from Dogmatica decks, you just send it, and then you pop a card in field. Pretty standard and easy there. From here, it's just a bunch of Kaleidoscope targets. So we have Vajrayana for our level 6, we have Omega for our level 8. I don't think this ever comes up. It probably will never come up, but it's kind of funny. You also, I will say, you can play this because in the Dogmatica matchup, if they pop the Maximus, you can just keep sending Omega Herald or Omega Entis and just keep up with their grind game because you'll never run out of extra cards in your extra deck to send, and you'll always be getting searches with it. 1 copy of Trish for level 9, 1 copy of Dragoon Knight Ascalon for level 10, Trishula Zero Dragon for level 11, Cosmic Blazar Dragon for level 12. And then the rest of the extra deck really doesn't matter that much. I have Phoenix and Unicorn for corner cases that realistically will never come up. This is supposed to be the Nephthys Link 3. I think it's called Nephthys the Sacred Flame. Basically, the only thing that thing does is if you use a ton of ritual monsters to link summon it, it just gets really big. And then Apollosa is actually supposed to be the, I think it's the Fossil Warrior Skull Knight. It's the level 6. Because the reason you play that is you can send it off of Kaleidoscope to summon Brionac, and then it banishes itself to target a monster that your opponent controls and destroy it. So it's kind of like a more situational Entis, but you can summon Brionac with it instead. I don't know, I mean, realistically, if I'm going to be completely honest, the only cards you actually need in here are the Heralds and the Entis. Everything else is just extravagant targets. But that is it for the deck. Let me go into some test hands. Alrighty guys, welcome to the combo tutorial / test hands half of the video. So what's going to happen here is I'm going to run a couple hands and I'm just going to show a couple combos as well, just so that you can see what to do with the deck. Because NEKROZ isn't the most difficult deck to play on the face of the planet, but it is argued to be a somewhat difficult deck just to maintain your resources, because there's a lot of different ways you can go, and some of those ways can lose you the game very quick if you don't know what you're doing. So starting off with hand number 1, we have Mirror, that's not a good start. Gungnir, Candle, Extravagance, Unicorn. Alright, this is pretty good. So we're going to start off, of course, with our copy of Pot of Extravagance, give that extra deck a good shuffle, and then we're going to banish just the top 6. Let's hope we did not hit any of the Heralds. Okay, we hit 2 of them, but that's fine. Like, we hit 4 of the 5 targets to send off of Kaleidoscope, but again, that's fine. You should only ever really need one. And then we're going to draw Pensaplume Lancia. That turns on basically our entire hand. So we're going to start with the Pensaplume. We can reveal the Gungnir here because this can kind of fiend a little bit of an Ash. We don't really care too much. But we'll start with the Pensaplume revealing itself, and we will search our copy of... Where is it? Well, it summons one. That not searches my life. So we will go for the copy of Talismandra. We go for this because we want to get a Brionac engrave, because we do have the mirror, so we kind of want to keep that in mind. So we're going to do that to search Brionac, then discard Brionac to search Chalice, discard Chalice to search Kaleidoscope, and then activate the Kaleidoscope to ritual summon our copy of Unicore by sending our final Herald the Arclight to the graveyard. Now Herald is going to search. It's really up to you what you want to search here. I could go for a Ben 10 if I had the cycle, but I don't. So this hand's a little bit more like just set up the Unicore and then be prepared on the crackback. So what I'm actually going to go for is I'm just going to go for the copy of the Chalice Slime, I believe, because what I can do here, like I have the targeting, I have the destruction protection for the Unicore, and I have the Lancia plus the Unicore itself, which is actually a lot of disruption. So what I can do with this, I still have Chalice Slime, and I'll have Candle plus the Mirror. So I can do with Candle is I can reveal the next turn. So we're just gonna say say these things die, and then the Unicore, we Lancia, and then they're gonna try and punch over it, we'll say no. So we draw for turn, oh, that's actually kind of busted. So what we can do here is we can do Candle reveal itself in Mirror, because we won't want to search the ritual spell immediately, but we also have the Chalice Slime we're gonna want to resolve. So we'll go for whichever one we don't want to summon. So we'll summon here what we're gonna summon, what we're not going to summon off the Chalice Slime, I'm sorry. So we can go Candle for Talismandra, and then Talismandra can search for our copy of Unicore. The reason we do that is because Unicore gives us enough levels in the graveyard by discarding it to add back to Brionac, because we're going to get back to Brionac anyway. So what we can do here is we can discard Unicore, target Brionac, add back to hand, and then discard Brionac to search another NEKROZ. The reason I'm kind of going past turn 1 is because the deck's turn 1 setups aren't that impressive, but it's more just what you got to do on the crackback. So you can go for a couple things here. You can go for Trishula if you want. You could just go for another copy of Clausulus. But honestly, we already have the Gungnir in circulation. I'm just going to go for the Trish because we also have the Ardbeer. But now, what you could also do, which is a little bit more saucy, is you could also go for the Shirt because you have the Ardbeer and you'll be able to establish that. But again, that is just personal preference. So now what we do is we're going to do the Chalice Slime. We're going to discard the Chalice Slime to summon out our copy of, where is it? The Pensaplume. Now the Pensaplume is going to add back the Gungnir from grave. If you wanted to, you can go for Gungnir, you can go for the Brionac for more follow-up. Again, this is all where you kind of have to figure out what's good based on the state of the game. NEKROZ is inherently a very reactive deck, and it's great at chipping through whatever your opponent may put out, as long as it's not just insanely overpowered like the Dragon Link boards. So if you're able to just slow them down a little bit, the deck is actually great at just picking apart whatever they may have. So again, for here, off of the Pensaplume, we can go for Gungnir, we can go for Unicore just to get more stuff back next turn, and we can go for Brionac, but personally, in most cases, I would go for Gungnir just to give additional target protection. And then we fire off the Mirror. What we do is we can tribute the Candle and banish the Brionac, or tribute the Talismandra and banish the Unicore. It's again just personal preference, but I want to hold on to, I want to hold on to the 9 levels on board for the Trishula whenever it may come up. So I will tribute the Candle and banish the Brionac, because again, we can get to Brionac because we have Shirt to tribute off of Ardbeer. We're not summoning a ritual spell. So yeah, now at this point in the game state, we would have an Ardbeer, we would have the Unicore plus free tributes, or just blockers, plus the Shirt and the Gungnir for protection. This is just, again, we're just kind of hanging in there, we're punching over the opponent's monsters, we're just whittling away their card advantage. That's actually a pretty solid hand. It was a little bit weird at the start, and you can kind of definitely tell because it didn't end on like full board of Unicore plus Vanity's Ruler, but it still dropped Unicore, which in a lot of games can put enough pressure on to get the game to last long enough to where you can do your own things. Hand 1 is a little bit weird. Let's get to hand 2. Starting with Chalice Line, that's a great start. Pensaplume, Extravagance, Prep, Talismandra. Okay, there's a little bit too much incantation in here, but I think we should be able to work around that. The only issue that really comes up with that is if we draw some off the Extravagance, and then we don't get as much grind game out of the Chalice Line, but that's usually fine. We're going to leave with Extravagance once again. Just banishing top 6, I don't really think it matters. Again, yeah, banish Double Herald, it's fine, we still have the 3rd one, and we'll get that first search. Drawing our copies of Cycle and Callback Grade. This is actually pretty good. So what you can do here is you can do Chalice Slime, discarding the Cycle to summon something from deck. It doesn't really matter. Personally, I would go for the Candle here, because then the Candle can search a ritual spell. Now, usually this won't fetch the Ash. What will fetch the Ash is usually the Talismandra, but it doesn't really matter because we have Call to the Grave. And actually, I believe this hand ends on full board. So what we can go for here is we can search for the kaleidoscope, right? And now, because we have preparation of rites, we can get back the cycle that we got from the graveyard and then search for our copy of Brionac. So from there, again, we just, off of just a couple cards, we have 7 cards in hand, we have the candle on board, and we're gonna be able to start ritual summoning in just a second. So realistically, it doesn't matter where we go from here, but what I personally want to do is I want to go for Brionac, discarding. If this gets mashed, we don't really care again, like we said, we have the Call by the Grave. So we can go for our copy of Unicore, and then we can then Pencil Plume, reveal the Unicore, because we already got the ritual spell search, but we still haven't used the Talismandra. So we'll summon the second of Talismandra from deck, and from here we can search for our copy of really whatever you want, but personally I'm going to search Ben 10, because then I can search my Trishula off of some of the later searches in the combo. So now you go Kaleidoscope, sending your copy of Herald. This time it's the German one, so it searches twice. Just kidding, it does not actually do that. Don't use that as a ruling. So you send the German Herald, and then Herald will search. It doesn't really matter what for at this point, because we already have the Ben 10, we already have the Brionac, so personally, I would probably go for either Gungnir or Trish. It really just depends on the matchup. If you're playing against Eldritch, I would go for the Trish, because this stops them from Golden Lord sending the Unicore. If you're playing against anything that's not Eldritch, I would probably go for Gungnir, because that Battle Fader-esque protection is a little bit more important, I believe. So that's just personal preference. But yeah, for me, myself, I will be going for the Gungnir. Then we will activate the cycle, tributing the Ben 10 to summon the copy of Brionac. And then Ben 10 will search for a copy of Vanity's Ruler, because guess what, we haven't normal summoned yet. So then, it doesn't really matter what you tribute over, but I kind of like the idea of retaining the level 6 if we do have to ritual summon another ritual monster from our graveyard, like our like a Brionac or something like that. It is really just personal preference, but personally I always like leaving the 6, so I'm going to tribute everything that's not Talismandra for our copy of Vanity's Ruler. I'll set this Call by the Grave, and then that is just basically full board. We have Talisman, we have Chalice again for next turn, we have the Gungnir to prevent the Unicore from being destroyed, and we have just the Vanity's Ruler plus a bunch of bodies on board. If they can't break this, they're going to die next turn. That was much closer to full board, I would say, so that was a much better hand. We will go for the third and final hand, and then if we don't see a certain 2-card combo that I want to bring up, there's 2 different quote-unquote 2-card combos, if you will, that get you the Unicore plus some stuff that you want. If we don't see either of them, I will do them separately as just like combos that are like sort of bread and butter for the deck, if you will. So we have Manju, Unicore, called by Kaleidoscope. This is pretty good. So I'm going to do here, this actually does lead into the 2-card combo, although it's a little bit convoluted. So I will highlight what cards you will need to get at some point. So we'll leave with the Kaleidoscope, which will send our copy of Herald to summon our copy of Unicore. Now, Herald will activate its effect to search. Now, what I will go for here is actually the Chalice line, which may seem a little bit strange at first, because you're going to use the Chalice line discard effect to continually summon incantations from deck over the course of the next turn. So you have the Chalice line, but you also have the Manju. So now what we're going to do is we're going to also summon the Manju, and this search may look a little bit strange, but hear me out. We're actually going to search for the copy of Incantation Inception. So these 2 cards give you a very powerful recursive loop that cannot be ignored. These 2 alone give you Unicore plus the ability to do it all over again next turn, and then have protection for the Unicore from either targeting or destruction. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the Chalice line effect, discarding the Inception. That is not for cost, by the way. That's something else to keep in mind. Discarding is not cost. Just revealing is cost. So we will reveal that, then for effect, discard the Inception to summon the Talismandra. Now we haven't gotten our Brionac search yet, so we will use Talismandra search for Brionac. And then we will activate Inception, sending the Talismandra back to add the Inception back to hand, and then summon out a copy of Kandal from deck. Now Kandal can go for really whatever you want here, but because of the levels, I think it's actually a little bit smarter to go for a copy of Mirror, because this hand isn't really great at being able to spit out the Vanity's Ruler board, because we don't have the necessary materials to get both Ben 10 and Brionac. So instead, what I think I'm going to go is I think I'm actually just going to search for the Mirror. Because then what I can do is I can discard Brionac to search for a copy of Aradbir. Grab that, I can definitely confirm only 3 extra cards does make a big difference in just cycling time looking through your cards. It is a little bit annoying, but when every card searches, you just want to max out on it, you know what I mean? So we will activate the mirror, then we will banish the Brionac, and then you can either tribute the Manju or the Candle. I'm just going to tribute the Candle because I do like that Manju actually has attack on it, and we will summon our copy of Aradbeer. Now, we have the Inception and the Chalice line for next turn. We have the Unicorn, so we can discard to get some stuff back. It doesn't really matter what. But again, next turn we will be getting a search for both a ritual monster and a ritual spell with this combo. So, that is what happens when we draw the combo off of, after summoning the Unicorn. But let me show you what happens when we just draw these 2 cards on their own. So now let's get from the test hands into the combo tutorial itself, if you will. So Inception Chalice Sign gives some very interesting features to this deck, and then it gives you both the win condition and the grind game to keep up with a lot of control decks. So if you have these 2 cards in your hand, bear in mind Chalice Sign can also be Preparation of Rites, it can also be Manju. Like, we got to the combo a little bit weirdly last hand, but it still worked. So what you do to start off the combo is you activate Chalice Sign, reveal itself for cost, discard Inception for effect, and then usually I go for my copy of Candle first. Now Candle will get you your search for your Kaleidoscope. Then you will activate Inception in Graveyard, sending the Candle for cost to add itself back to your hand and summon your copy of Talismandra from there. Now Talismandra will search for your copy of, you could go straight for the Unicorn, but personally I like going for Brionac just to also have the levels engraved to be able to banish for Kaleidoscope because that will come up in the mid game. So then you activate the Brionac, discard itself to search for a copy of Unicorn. And then if we have Unicorn Kaleidoscope, we're going to fire that, activate the Kaleidoscope, sending a Herald the Arclight from the extra deck to summon our copy of NEKROZ of Unicorn. Now Herald will search, it really depends on the matchup what you search for here. You could search for either Gungnir, like I said, if you're against Virtual World or anything that does destruction. But if you're against decks like Eldritch or stuff that just targets but doesn't destroy, you could go for Trish. Personally, I just go for Trish. So now you can see off of the 2 cards, we have the Unicorn, we have the ability to search another Ritual Monster and Ritual Spell next turn, we have the targeting protection, and this is all off of 2 cards. The other 2 card combo that I want to show is a much newer one that came into fruition post Ghosts from the Past. This one's a little bit more strange, but it is one that you have to keep in mind when you open the copy of Aradbeer. Not Classless, Aradbeer. So what you do is you activate the Aradbeer effect, discard itself for cost, and then you'll tribute the Shuret to send whatever NEKROZ ritual you want. Usually I search the cycle. And then Shuret, because it was tributed, will search for your copy of Brionac. Now you can activate cycle to banish whatever you want and itself. Usually I will banish the copy of Shuret because we have a second Shuret, but we don't have a second Aradbeer. So having that engraved for recursion for when you may want to summon it is actually kind of important. So you can do that and get your copy of Kaleidoscope. From here, it's smooth sailing, discard Brionac, go to Unicorn, activate Kaleidoscope, sending a Herald of the Arclight to summon out your copy of Win Condition Unicorn. Herald can search if you want. This all just depends on what else is in hand, but if you have like nothing for recursion, you could either go for Protection in Trishula and or Gungnir. Let me grab that. But if you also want recursion, you could go for Chalice Line. So basically that is the combo. You end on the Unicorn, you get either of these to your hand, so Destruction Protection, Targeting Protection, and recursion for next turn. That is it. Hope you guys enjoyed the deck profile. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more. Make sure to let me know what you think in the description. I like to think I did this deck some good justice, but if you think there are other things that you would change, please let me know. I'm always open to feedback. This is your boy, Pay8. Feeling a little better now. I will see y'all later. Peace.